Welcome to Founder Friday with Semgrep. This is our new series where we get to quiz the founders about various things. And I am here with Drew Dennison, one of the founders of Semgrep. Drew, will you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Drew. I serve as our CTO here at Semgrep, which basically means I get to play with all the cool technology and go to conferences like re:Invent, work with the engineering team. It's a lot of fun.
It's true. He is understating a little bit. He does a lot of stuff because I've seen it and I know. And I believe that you also head up our AI task force. Is this true?
That is true. This last 6 months or so, I've been kind of directly involved with the groups working on generative AI at the company, and it's kind of fun for me because the field is changing so fast, and I really love new technology and building products for our customers. But also kind of I get to code a little bit too, which I really enjoy.
It's the best. So I wanted to talk for this session about AI and about AWS re:Invent, because basically, so I wasn't at AWS re:Invent, but you went and a couple of our people went. And from what I understand, and you can confirm or deny this accusation, but that it was a lot about AI and a lot about lessons learned from startups and all walks of life, actually, using AI for better or for worse. is that sort of like a lot of what AWS re:Invent was about this year?
It really was. You could tell Amazon is continuing to spend, a ton of energy and time and focus on generative AI. So I'm sure we'll talk more about that. Maybe even some specific product things that Amazon announced. One of the cool things was I went to a couple meetups and happy hours, and there were a bunch of other startups. And one theme I noticed was there was a lot of voice startups. I don't know, maybe this is just the three random startups that I remember talking to, but they were all doing something with, real time or translation of generated voice. One that I thought was pretty cool was they wanted to let people be able to broadcast, say, like a football game or something like that, and then in real time, translate it and then also generate synthetic AI voice. So, you can watch it in your language, which I thought was really cool. Technology enabling something that would obviously be either prohibitively expensive or just impossible to do, especially in real time.
I remember years ago speaking at Microsoft Ignite the Tour, and they had just invented their live captioning. And that was brand new, bleeding edge in 2019. And now it's like way beyond that. And it was imperfect, to say the least, with my Canadian accent. You should have seen what it typed when I said a boot.
Yep. I'm sure the quality is still something that is work in progress, but and then of course with all the generative AI stuff being the focus, I don't want to overshadow the fact that Amazon, in every single area, storage, compute, they rolled out a whole bunch of new things, and so I think for startups such as Semgrep, the cloud just continues to let companies get this like massive tech leverage, right? Amazon spending how many billions of dollars, and some of the best like database engineers, for example, with their new distributed Aurora database that lets you start with zero and kind of scale that. They say almost to infinity, right? And so it's like, okay, that's pretty awesome tech leverage that we don't have to have 10 engineers or something try to build, and so just continuing the trend of cloud computing. It's fun to see how far that's come in the last few years.
As a person that really loved to code and did not love infrastructure, cloud is a gift. It is so fantastic. I agree with you so much, Drew.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
I have so many questions for you. So at re:Invent this year, were there any trends that stood out for you besides there being a lot of AI, or were there any specific AI things that were super interesting to you or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, Amazon came out with their own new models. So they're like Nova models. And I feel like the theme of Amazon is always like choice, right? They're going to be the provider. They're not really here to pick winners. If you want to use Anthropic, great. If you want to use their models, if you want to use Facebook or Meta's models, like great, they're going to provide all that. But one of the things that Amazon is able to do is like just keep pushing the cost down. And so I think if I'm was reading the pricing page, right, it's like 40% cheaper to use their models, which is just going to continue, I think, to push generative AI to be more affordable and ubiquitous across the entire tech stack. And then I think another area that is a focus for them is like, I thought they did some interesting presentations around like AI safety, which we could talk a lot about. But it was this idea of actually using an LLM to generate these logic rules automatically, and then say, okay, now that I have this set of kind of formal logic rules, I can now use that to check and make sure that the output, when we're actually going with customers, doesn't violate one of these, basic logic rules, so that we, are sure that there's not like a mistake, or there might still be some mistakes, but at least like the core things. If you're trying to do transactions or something online, at least the price is not negative, for example. So that's an example where I'm like, okay, people are starting to think about these guardrails, and I think they call it bedrock guardrails, and I was like, oh, that's actually really cool. And then another trend that I saw them doing is like they're continuing to push these larger and larger models. That's the trend across all of the foundation model providers, but those large models are very compute intensive, right? They're super smart, super powerful. And so something people want to do is, can we actually make a custom model that's faster, smaller, and cheaper? And so there's this whole concept of kind of a student teacher. And so you can have a really expensive model that will then distill down into this smaller high performance model. And so Amazon built a bunch of infrastructure to help you do that. So I'm sure we'll be taking advantage of that here at Semgrep.
Do you know if they have any reg servers so that you can basically set up a database with a whole bunch of things you want it to train on? So for instance, I don't know, all the Semgrep rules, right? And then all the Semgrep documentation of how to write rules could be in the reg server. And it's like, always access this first, then the rest of the model, then give me answers. Is that something that they're offering? Because I was looking at Anthropic and OpenAI, and you had to set up your own reg server. And I was like, what a pain.
Yeah, they absolutely are. I think they call it GraphRag. That was one thing. And there was also a whole bunch of other things here where you could tell they're kind of using the fact that keep all your data in AWS, like S3, like tables was an option where you can just kind of put all of your data in analytics in S3, and then they made it really easy to query that and train on that without having to connect different systems. And so again, I think the power of the AWS platform, they're certainly leveraging that, and we get to take advantage of all that since we're big AWS users.
I'm so excited, Drew. Did they have So I just took a course last week with this amazing person named Jason Haddix, and he showed us all of these amazing bots that he made us in OpenAI. And I'm wondering if it's just as easy to make them in AWS. Like, we should make one.
Yeah, I have actually not tried to make a bot, but I know they had their multi-agent thing, and you can kind of use different bots. And I think, again, Amazon is all about choice, and so letting you choose different models and for different agents makes a lot of sense. It's kind of fun to see them building all the plumbing and infrastructure for all these companies that are going to build the next wave of AI applications on top of AWS.
Well, and I love that they'll let you use whichever provider you want, because some are better for coding, some are better for writing. Like there's just so many different options. I don't know if you heard about Anthropic's computer use that they just came out with. And so you can have it do things on your computer for you. And I can't wait for it to handle my LinkedIn messages.
It's very true, right? And I think, I saw computer use. I got a chance to play with it a little bit at Anthropic's Builder Day. It basically, is, I think, this trend of, we've built these really smart models that are great at generating text. And that was kind of the headline of last year, and obviously that's still happening in video. But now we're getting into this world of like tool use, right? And these LLMs are starting to operate very oftentimes clumsily in the real world. I'm sure it would be hilarious to watch it try to use your LinkedIn. I'm sure it would make all kinds of mistakes, but it'll get better every year. So excited to see where that goes.
Are there So I see companies doing all sorts of things with AI. Is there anything that you found particularly interesting? Because I bet a million companies at AWS want to tell everyone, this is what I'm doing with AI, buy my product. Was there anything like just cool that stood out for you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there absolutely was, and I think like that's sometimes a little overwhelming, just how much number of startups and people doing interesting things there. I already talked a little bit about the voice stuff, but another thing I saw is like I think people want to just continue to make their workflows smarter, and I think people are kind of figuring out how to embed that into all their different application workflows. It kind of maybe still seems a little bit far-fetched, but if you imagine like in 2 or 3 years ago, an example I was thinking about at reInvent was, okay, like if I want to set my alarm clock on my phone, right now that's something it's like, okay, I got this call, it's set an alarm for 7:30, whatever. Why should I have to go and spend time thinking about that when I could have an agent in the background that would, operate in like a personal assistant, whatever, integrate with my calendar, fitness tracker, everything, and just be like, oh, I found the perfect time for you to wake up every day. And so I think, a workflow like that, but that's just one of many, will be kind of right for this AI agent to operate behind the scenes, and ideally we won't even know it's AI powered.
I would love stuff like that. I would love it if it could do sort of like a triage on my inbox. And for instance, it's like, oh, this person wants to meet.
Mm-hmm.
Send them my calendar link to meet, or talk to their AI and just do it and put it into my calendar for me. Oh, the HR system says I have to take a new GDPR course because we had that fun GDPR course that they took, which listeners, I'm not kidding. Our GDPR course was fun. It was very silly and fun. It was, right?
It really was, yeah. But it reminded me closer to a bunch of TikTok videos than your standard kind of enterprise corporate security training.
But I digress. But like, wouldn't it be cool if then it like adds a task to your task list, and then it's like, oh, it's been 2 days, Tanya hasn't worked on that yet, and then it adds a block in my calendar that's like, hey, what if you worked on this now?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see where that all goes in the next few years, but I think we're going to see a bunch of startups just taking workflows that we already do and just making them smarter. And so,
oh yeah, you talked about AI safety, and that's a whole thing, Drew. Like safety that we don't get a bill that we're not expecting, safety that it doesn't make decisions that harm our business or our customers, safety that it doesn't go wild with hallucinate. Like there's so many things that could go wrong. Do you have any I don't know if the word is guidance or thoughts on AI safety for us?
yeah, well, I mean, this is a huge area of focus. So far, at least the agents are not doing crazy real world things yet, but I'm sure that's coming. I think, the way we think about it is really all about customer trust. And so how do we say things that we feel extremely confident in? And then every time we release like a new model, we always go through this validation phase where we have, us humans go through and look at, 100 examples or something and make sure that they're, acceptable, then not anything harmful. And, of course, that doesn't guarantee it won't happen in the future, but at least we feel like we are at least have this kind of manual human check. And then this is where I was mentioning the Bedrock guardrails technology that Amazon's done, where they're starting to put these automated filters that kind of run after the model, just to make sure that it passes the deterministic checks. And I think about kind of code security. I think there's a opportunity here to blend together like generative AI, but also a deterministic engine like Semgrep or kind of any code understanding engine that's going to go through and say, well, okay, I don't care what the LLM says. This is an actual data flow where like attackers can modify this input, and we just know that as a fact. And then together those two things can I think be better than either one. I think that's a
Well, it gives better advice than ever before, right? Like, because you have essentially this engine that we already had doing security testing, and then you add an AI that we've trained on top of that, and then you're getting essentially two opinions instead of one like you used to. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that blend, that hybrid approach is probably our best bet to make sure that things don't go too far off the rails, because we're kind of building secure guardrails. We love to talk about that here, but you're kind of building secure guardrails for AI I'm sure that will be increasingly important as we give AI more important jobs in our society.
Mm-hmm. So now we're sort of talking about challenges, and not to be negative, but so founders, right? So lots of startups everywhere. So founders, CTOs, people who are dealing with AI for the first time, like, are there challenges? Like, so if they're going to adopt AI into their business or for software development, is there something that they might want to prepare for?
Well, something I've been thinking a lot about is how do we not overhype these capabilities? Because generative AI is supposed to solve all the world's problems, and we know that's not going to be true. And I did talk to a few engineers that were very skeptical at reInvent. They kind of were rolling their eyes at the yet another generative AI thing. And so I think it's very important to keep the AI work that you're building grounded in reality. What are the capabilities, but also the limitations of the system, and just be upfront and transparent about that. Semgrep Assistant is not perfect. To give one set of data, when we did our evaluation set, looked at, does Semgrep Assistant think something's a true positive or false positive? If it thinks it's a false positive, it's not a security issue. In the human evaluation we did, it was like 96% accurate. Like, okay, that's pretty good. But when it goes the other way, it's only 30% accurate. And you're like, all right, so if it thinks it's a false, if it thinks it's a true positive, it may, or it's probably not, right? Odds are it's not actually a true positive. And so we don't want to show you 10 examples of things that are like, oh, the AI thinks this is a real security vulnerability. You look at them and you're like, no, it's not. Like, turn that off. We'd rather build the product in a way that's like, okay, it's closer to a spam filter for your email. And it's like, okay, these are ones we think are 96% likely you can ignore. We're not going to completely delete them. You can go back and look at them yourself, but focus on the other ones, and let's not waste your time looking through things that are obviously test code or things that are just a waste of everyone's time. So that would be one piece of advice I'd give for other founders and other people thinking about building AI into their product, because as an industry, I think we're going to have to go through the classic hype cycle, and people will get disillusioned with AI when it doesn't do all the things people on Twitter or whatever are saying it will.
Yes, I completely agree. I see this where they're like, the AI is going to do everything for you. I'm like, is this thing on? Yeah. So being realistic I think that's great advice.
Yeah. I think the other advice I would give is don't try to train your own models. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I think people thought like, okay, we're going to actually buy a bunch of GPUs. We're going to go, do this from scratch, and you could probably spend millions of dollars doing that, and then next week Anthropic drops a new model that's 3 times better, and you're just like, wait a minute. So like the approach we've taken is we're going to use one of the 6 main foundation model companies, and we've architected our code so we can switch between them as new models come out, and then we're going to refine, tune, distill, build on top of all the work that they're doing. And so we're still customizing and building a specific model that's really good at security. But it seems infeasible to try to start from scratch these days.
Yeah, I agree. It's like trying to build your own operating system, right? Like it's like they're just
exactly.
So far ahead.
Right.
So, do you have any key takeaways from AWS that you feel like every founder should know, or that everyone should know?
Yeah. Well, one thing that was kind of surprising to me, and maybe I just had the wrong mental model going into it, was like Amazon really wants to work with startups. And I kind of figured we, talked to their partner things, and they said, "Oh, we'll help you out with this deal or that other thing." And I'm like, "We're too small to matter." Amazon's got these giant partners, even competitors of ours and others that they're always going to prioritize these much larger deals. And what was really obvious from reInvent, even just looking at how they laid it out in Vegas with 5 different casinos and all these different places, is that there's actually like 50 different Amazons, and they all kind of work autonomously. And so the AWS startups people were great. They had a whole space, and there's a bunch of similarly sized and slightly larger and slightly smaller companies. And those people really, their job, their goal, their metrics was helping startups like us succeed. And they kept reinforcing over and over and over again that Amazon's platform, they're not here to pick the winner. They want customers to pick the best technical solutions, and they want to give everyone equal footing. And help us continue to grow and everyone else. And so that was really like reassuring to hear that, and made me realize like, oh, okay, maybe it's like we should spend more time engaging with some of their go-to-market things like the marketplace and some of their startup accelerators.
Yeah, maybe next year one of you could speak at it and show a really cool thing we made with their stuff.
Yeah, actually, something the Amazon team, their own internal security team, is they actually built this security tool called Ash, and they integrated Semgrep, and they were like, "Oh, we actually really wanted to give a talk on how to write Semgrep rules." I was like, "You should talk to us because we have multiple internal talks, including a bunch of your stuff, Tanya, and we could actually go and give a talk about something that's open source, easy to use, and Amazon could talk about how they're actually using it to secure the code internally." So I thought that was super cool. And then the other thing I realized too is that Amazon has now gotten so large they've split into reInvent and Reinforce, and Reinforce is more their security conference. And so not that there wasn't a bunch of security stuff at reInvent, but it was interesting to realize that cloud security has gotten so important. It's now a second conference.
That's very exciting that they're prioritizing that, because when cloud started, that wasn't necessarily the primary driver, let's say.
Yep.
Okay, so I wrote this question ahead of time, so forgive me that it's a little intense, but how can startups balance adopting cutting edge technologies while staying focused on growth? I know
that's not too hard of a question, but great question. We've always used something called barbell strategy, which I think is a term from like hedge funds or bond fund investing. Nassim Taleb writes about it a lot, but basically it comes down to the idea is that you should put like 90% of your money or your time on your safe bets. We're not trying to be super innovative here. It's like, let's go talk to customers, see what problems customers are having. We're going to build for them. And then the 10% is on your like craziest, riskiest, highest upside bets, like maybe generative AI, for example. So that's how we thought about it. I think that's a kind of a conservative and a smart approach, and it lets us take risk in a smart way, knowing that we're not betting the entire company on one piece of technology that is still fairly unproven and changing a lot.
I see a lot of startups making really big bets on certain technologies taking off, and I'm like, I am way too conservative for that. Like the whole company, that's their bet, and I'm like, ooh.
And maybe like for a company that's just getting off the ground, that actually makes a lot of sense. But like I know when Semgrep was in the very earliest days, our version of this was we're going to choose really, really, really boring back end and front end tech stack. This was the time when like React had just come out, GraphQL was all the rage. And I was like, I could go learn GraphQL. I've never done anything with it. Like maybe that's a good idea. And I was like, no, probably not. That's probably not the area we should go spend calories on. Like, let's just do boring old REST technology. I know how to do that, and then we'll figure it out. And obviously it means we missed out on some of the advances there on like front end and back end technology that now the team is going through and building. But I think it was absolutely the right call to be like, what's our core differentiator? Oh, it's all about writing custom rules for security and helping engineers secure their code. They don't really care if we're using Python or Java or whatever.
So we only have 4 minutes left, so I'm going to ask the exciting question. So imagine you could see the future. So you just saw a zillion things at reInvent, and a lot of that is predictions of the future, right? So in 3 years or so, what do you think is going to be happening?
Well, I really think the generative AI stuff is going to be completely ubiquitous. We talk about this in Semgrep and kind of SaaS 3.0. Like there's SaaS 1.0, which is just finding bugs in code, and then 2.0, you're kind of customizing and you're getting developers to say, hey, this is what matters, and I'm kind of explicitly telling you this function, this pattern is unsafe, and that's great. But now we can kind of build this whole feedback loop of like, okay, now we're going to just get feedback directly from developers, feed that into an LLM to understand and summarize and contextualize that, and then even generate a new rule, modify the Semgrep rule, feed that context back into the engine so when it's scanning the code. So that's a little bit of a security specific answer, but I think that workflow, just building in AI into the fabric of all of our workflows, will be a trend that I expect to see. From everything from self-driving cars to apps on our iPhone, and of course security.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
If you could give attendees one takeaway from this whole conversation that you want them to remember, what would it be?
Well, I think the like building on the cloud and leveraging the bets and letting these hyperscalers like Amazon bring the best technology, the latest technology to you, and making it so you can use that for pennies on the dollar. It just continues to be a great bet for startups. And I think we'll see that to be true with generative AI. And then the great thing is it is a sales conference for Amazon, right? So they put all their content online, and so you can actually go and watch the keynotes without having to travel to Vegas or see that. So go check out the talks yourself.
Oh, that's so exciting. I didn't realize most of their talks were online, so that's really good. Because, like, I mean, at least it's Vegas in December instead of Vegas in August.
That's true. It was a lot. It was a lot more bearable walking down the strip. So.
Yeah, I bet. Drew, thank you so much for being on our brand new little show called Founder Friday. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Tanya. Appreciate you hosting.
We'll see you all next time, and I hope you all have a great weekend. Bye.